Hi guys, welcome to back to the session 2 of object operating system concepts, and here I am going to discuss something about computer system architecture. So what does a computer system operation contains? When computer system operation occurs, during this the I/O devices and CPU executes concurrently, and each device controller. Okay, so this is about giving you some concept about like how the I/O occurs. Okay, whenever the I/O occurs, the data moves from the main memory to the local buffer, and local buffer is, as I have told you, is device controller is in charge of a particular device, and each device controller have a local buffer. So each device controller are having a local buffer. So whenever an I/O occurs, the CPU moves the data from the main memory to the local buffer. Then the I/O occurs. Okay, and after the execution of the I/O, we have to the interrupt is created. Okay, so the interrupt is created because just to inform the CPU that the I/O has just occurred. Okay, and this is the particular process of how the I/O is occurring. Now, what is the interrupt then? Interrupt is something that contains all the addresses of the service region. Okay, and the key note is like operating system functions by interrupt, only by interrupt. So all the functionality in the operating system, what does it do, what is done, is all by throwing the interrupt. Okay, so how do we handle the interrupt then? We can handle the interrupt in many different ways. Okay, and the particular process must be also performed, like the interrupt architecture must save all the addresses of the interrupted instructions. Okay, whatever the instructions are interrupted must be saved in the interrupt architecture, and we can determine the type of the interrupt by polling or vectored interrupt system, and different actions are performed in each case of each type of interrupt, and this action is declared in separate segments. So in a particular case of interrupt, the particular action is performed. Okay, so and these actions are in particular case, and this case are independent with each other. Okay, so different case can occur, and different instructions like interrupt will occur depending on the case of the interrupt, and these actions must be declared in a separate segment. Whenever the interrupt occurs, such kind of actions must be performed is pre-declared. So incoming interrupt are disabled while another interrupt is being processed to prevent loss of interrupt. So this is the way of handling the interrupt, is like we just disable all kind of incoming interrupt while the another interrupt is being processed. This is done just to prevent the loss of interrupt. Okay, now going on to the next question, what is the I/O structure then? Input and output structure. Input and output structure, we can think just as some input and output, okay, phenomena, and it consists of two kind of structures. That is some two methods, like that is synchronous method and asynchronous method. Okay, and in synchronous method we control. Okay, the control will return to the user program only if I/O completes. This means like the I/O must complete. Okay, input and output operation must complete so as to return the control to the user, back to the user program. Okay, unless the IO completes, it is impossible for the control to be returned to the user program. Whereas in the second type of structure, second type of IO structure, the control can return anytime. Okay, will return to the user program even without the IO completion. Okay, anytime in the middle of the IO operation, the control can just pass to the user program. Okay, how do we manage the IO interrupt then? We use the direct memory access structure, okay, in which only interrupt is generated per block rather than one interrupt per byte. Device controllers transfer block of data from buffer storage directly to the main memory without CPU intervention. Now going on to the next question is like, what are the types of storage structures? We have three main type of storage structures. Those are the main memory, that is a very large storage structure, okay, which CPU can access very directly. Whereas we have secondary storage, non-volatile storage structure. This is just the extension of the main memory. And some other like magnetic disks are also available, which consist of magnetic recording materials. And the point to be noted, like I just provided you some storage hierarchy, and storage hierarchy are labeled on the basis of the speed on which the access, how the speed on which you can access the memory. Okay, this is the storage hierarchy, is based on speed of access meant and the cost of using this, and also the volatility, how sophisticated, how rigid it is, how volatile it is. Okay, and here is a top and top down hierarchy of storage structures, storage devices, okay, in descending order from top to down order. Okay, so registers are in the top order, whereas cache, and then comes the main memory, then electronic disk, then magnetic disk, optical disk comes later, and at the end, last one is the magnetic tapes. So these are the register are with the highest speed, and they are very cost efficient, and they are very non-volatile. Okay, and similarly the least, having the lowest space, is the magnetic tapes, and the cost and the volatility is also very low here. So what kind of operations are performed with the view of hardware protections then? Mostly we have four kind of protection mechanism, is like dual mode operation, IO protection, memory protection, and CPU protection, and these are each are dealt just in bottom of the lectures here, lecture down below. Okay, now then what is this dual mode operations then? Okay, and how does it protects the hardware? We share the system resources, so we have to be always careful that one operation do not affect the other, which might lead to execution error, right? So this is obvious because we are sharing the system resources. Okay, it is not only us who are using the system resources. There are two kind of, they are users, and they are also the operating system that is using the system resources. Okay, so in this case we have to be always careful that one operation doesn't affect the other, okay, because if our operation is affected, then this might lead to a programming error, okay, program error, execution error. So for this particular purpose, there is a dual mode is defined, okay, dual mode operation is defined to protect the hardware resources. And these two dual mode are user mode and the kernel mode. User mode is something that execution is done in behalf of the user, whereas in kernel mode the execution is done on behalf of the system. And for the particular for the using this, we also are provided with a mode bit, okay, which clearly indicates in which mode we are running. So this can be, if the bit is 0, then this signifies that we are in kernel mode, whereas if the bit is 1, then we are in user mode. So while there are also some other privileged instructions which can only be issued by in kernel mode. So dividing this kind of mode, we prevent some kind of error in the system, in the hardware system. Okay, now so how I/O protections is done? Okay, before going on to deal about the I/O protection, we have to understand that all the I/O instructions are privileged instructions. As discussed here before, some privileged instructions can only be issued in kernel mode. This means that we must ensure to protect this I/O. We have to ensure that the user program do not access the program in the kernel mode. Okay, so do not access the kernel mode. That must be assured to do the I/O protection. Example, user program cannot store new address in the interrupt vector. You have to prevent this kind of user programs to access the kernel mode. Now how memory protection is done then? Memory protection are done by using three kind of registers. And first is the fence register, which divides size among the monitor and user, okay, and must hold and this fence register, which must be the smallest legal physical memory address. So we must assure that the fence register that we have used is the smallest, it holds just the smallest legal physical memory address. Whereas we also use the base register, which determines the range of legal addresses a program may address, and also the limit register, which just contain the size of the range. So three kind of registers are used to do the memory protection. So okay, now how CPU protection is done then? In case of CPU protection, we just use the timer, okay, and timer is something that interrupts the computer after a specific period of time. So there is a timer which has some kind of a specific time head, okay, and this timer interrupts after some particular operation. So if the operation reaches some particular time, the interrupt occurs, okay, after a specific period of time. And this timer is also used for time sharing, and timer is decremented on each tick, so like it goes till 0, and whenever the value 0 is reached, the interrupt occurs. You set the time, and the time and decrement occurs in each tick, then whenever the value reaches 0, the interrupt occurs. So there is some kind of time limit, constraint, and using this constraint we can use do the CPU protection, and then constraint is done through timer. Okay, now how does the user program perform I/O? And given that, okay, for example, there is a last query. This says that, okay, we prevented we know that we discussed here that the I/O instructions are privileged instructions, so we must prevent the user program to access the the kernel mode, right? But the question says that how the user program perform the IO then. If the IO instructions are privileged instructions, then it is already discussed here that we have to prevent it from the user program to access the kernel mode. So if in this case, like how? No, scusa. Sì, sì, sì. No, 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 perché il mio carico è... Sì, 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 sì. Okay. Okay, sorry for the disturbance. Now, like, from... Okay, I was just discussing about like how what is the method, the particular method that the user program can call a kernel function. Right. So the situation is like we just use a system call. In this situation, if you want a user to call a kernel function, a user program, a user mode to access a function from a kernel mode, then a system call is used. Okay. So usually takes the form of a trap. Okay, it usually takes the form of a trap to a specific location in the interrupt vector. And what is does is the control passes through the interrupt vector to the service routine in the operating system, and we change the mode bit. Okay, just we change the mode bit. After the control passes through the interrupt vector, the mode bit is changed, and now the the monitor verifies their parameter and executes the request. So the monitor checks out that if is it in the kernel mode or user mode. It just check out the mode bit. Then after checking the mode bit, the monitor verifies that okay, this is in kernel mode, so the request is executed. Now lastly, the note I want to give you is about trap. What is trap? Trap is an interrupt generated in a software created by error or a request, user request. Okay. Usually generated in software. Interrupt generated in software. Okay. By error of a user. For example, the error can occur like a division by zero. Okay. Or memory access violation. So this kind of error causes a trap, and this is an interrupt somehow. Now, okay, sorry for some small little bit of disturbance, but I guess I explained, I gave you some key concept about computer system architecture. We will discuss much in detail later on in the upcoming sessions. Okay, this was just an overview of the critical concepts about interrupt, IO structures, handling the handling IO, okay, like the storage structures, type of storage, and then how we do the hardware protections. Okay. Yeah, thank you for listening.